Hi, everybody. Dave Hovde, along with Christina Favuzzi. And Christina's been covering the storm all overnight and early in the morning. And
You too, yeah. You were working until late last night putting together some weather graphics for me to use in the morning, which was a huge help. It's definitely been a challenging storm to try to figure out.
So I think one of the bigger narratives with the storm is it a dud? Because we're looking at 1 to 2 inches across the area with these big forecasts. We've been saying 2 to 6 inches. And it's in my view that this last section of the storm is potentially the biggest section of the storm. Probably not going to see some of the highest end of the range, but I still think we're going to see some areas that end up with 3-4 inches of rain. The question is where exactly it goes. Now, I know you've been following this morning some of the briefings they've had with fire crews across Santa Barbara County. You've been checking in with our crews. What can you tell us about what those folks have been saying and what our crews have been saying? So
they have 200 additional personnel moving into Santa Barbara County, especially the area of Montecito, right at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. That is when the Weather Service was initially forecasting the biggest brunt of this storm.
I agree with that. I think they're right.
Right, at about 2 o'clock. I think the timing has maybe moved back a little bit later in the afternoon, but that gives them time to get in position before this rain really starts to come down more heavily across the Central Coast.
It's kind of pulsing in terms of the activity.
Flows, on this system.
So what I was seeing from some of our crews today, we saw a dramatic increase in the amount of flow in the Montecito Creek area.
San Luis Creek is flowing, and that's been dry, or at least just a trickle for a long time.
And then, of course, we have that situation up in the Cambria area where we have a rock slide, which interestingly occurred even before Cambria saw a full inch of rain. So it doesn't take prolific rainfall. Sometimes just a little burst can do it. Or you have a compromised hillside that has just kind of been holding on and it wouldn't have taken much at all. But again, it's been a year where, if you look back on February, it just didn't rain. And all of a sudden in March, it just, and by the way, just exactly as spring starts, of course, we get this big storm system. Okay, if you have a minute, hang around. I want to show a couple of charts and then and we'll come back and visit with you about some of the news stuff that will be going on a little bit later on today. So this is just a look at some of the modeling here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can all see. And I'm actually going to change a couple of graphics here. Let's start with the first big question. When are we going to see heavier rainfall? And here it is. Right now, spotty across the area. I will show you Doppler radar coming up. We have seen rain rates today, which at times have been up to ½ inch per hour, but generally right now, they're much lighter than that. Okay, here's the modeling, and Christina was telling you about the staffing at about 2 o'clock when they think some of this is going to develop. Well, look at the modeling here. There's 3 o'clock, there's 4 o'clock, and what we're seeing in here is the heavier rain rates. One of the big things which has been showing up on modeling today, Christina mentioned it right away when I got in, was that perhaps this axis here of the main part of the plume may be shifting a little bit further to the west. I do need to say that there is variability. Modeling doesn't always do a great job with these atmospheric river events. I still think we have to have a lot of concern for the burn areas, even if this potential westward shift is in. But what would that westward shift mean? It would mean that San Luis, Paso, North Coast, and Southwest faces in the Santa Lucia range could still get hit with some really interesting rainfall as we go 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock here with this line. Again, we have to look at variability. If it moves a little bit further to the east, then it's a lot across the burn area, and if it goes a little bit further to the west, it's more Monterey County. However, most of the consensus forecasting really does kind of put it out here by point conception. But anyways, let's take a look as we go forward now into the overnight hours. Even though we have this one pulse into the evening hours, it does look like there's going to be one last gasp here that goes through the area between, say, 3 a.m. and 9 a.m., with the system essentially wrapping up some of its activity into Thursday afternoon. But even this is pretty interesting in here as we get into Thursday afternoon. So again, with 1 to 2 inches across the area, including burn areas, still 1 to 2 inches. When we talk about adding this much more potential additional rainfall, and again, this is assuming, this model is saying most of that is going to fall west. It's saying still 2 to maybe up to 5 inches of rain across southwest-facing slopes is still possible wherever that plume goes. So it can be up in San Luis Obispo County, can be down here. And just one note on these numbers. Even though computer models will give us exact numbers, that's not the forecast. This is sort of a good sample, but we have to build in what we know about these atmospheric river events. Models do change quite a bit, and that's why we often go with a forecast. I don't like probabilities. I don't like talking about 20% chance of rain, 30%. Clearly, it's raining almost everywhere, so it would be 100%. I like to talk more about time and when things are happening, but if you've watched my forecast, you're familiar with that. Just taking a look at the radar here, we're just going to zoom in. This is the last 6 hours. I'm going to put this into the current mode. So you can see, like, across the area currently, it's only a little bit of lighter rainfall. But if we go out to this batch, which is just off the coast, and sample the rain rates in here, there are some rain rates that are 0.3 of an inch an hour. Of course, there's a lot of variability. Some of it is only a few hundredths of an inch per hour. But again, go back to the camera tool here. I want to show you how much of this system has yet to go through the area. I'll use the measuring tool here to talk about how many miles that is. So all of this is moisture plume here, hundreds of miles of it. And I think the real question is, where does this get focused? It's going to turn. This plume is going to turn from more of this southwesterly to northeasterly. It does look like it's going to start to make a turn more to the south to north direction. So where does that plume go? Does it go right in here across the Central Coast? Does it go right in here across Montecito and the Burn areas? That's all really critical. So I think over time here, we're going to have to continue to watch the modeling into the afternoon. Flash flood watch still in place. We had aerial flood watch a little bit earlier. That was canceled, but that can be I shouldn't say watch. It was an advisory, meaning that we did have some flooding occurring. And then I just want to show you this real quickly here. This is a look at the model. Here we can see the full length of the plume. I just want to show you how that looks to start going more south to north across the area, which would make it run more perpendicular to potentially some of those Santa Ynez Mountains. So those would be the concerns moving forward. So back out here with Christina.
It's interesting to see how it's changed just even since this morning when I was putting those models together.
It is interesting, and I just think we can't leap too quickly into the new solutions. Though I do think we need to talk about that potential shift into San Luis Obispo County, because we're saturated now, and we're starting to see areas of ponding now. And if we look at the timing, well, you do this every single day in the morning. When you start putting heavier rain on the roads when people are driving them, it's incredible how much more accidents, even if you tell people, even if you warn people.
It just doesn't take long. We saw a semi-truck jackknife down in Santa Barbara. We've had a number of incidents, and luckily CHP has been really on top of it. They've increased staffing today, and they've been getting those accidents cleared up pretty quickly, but you can't emphasize it enough to just slow down or avoid the roadways if you can. But yeah, we've seen quite a number of crash-ins already today.
So ultimately, I think we're going to end up in the range that we talked about, this big 2 to 6 inch. Right. And I mean, to be fair to some of the criticisms out there, that's a huge range. To say 2 to 6, that's like saying 0 to 100 to some people. But I think this is a significant event. I think it's still worthwhile to be. I was just checking out John Lindsay, great meteorologist from PG&E. He came out with his afternoon outlook for the storm, and he is still really big. I'm talking about smaller numbers than he is, but he absolutely knows what he's talking about. And he still thinks the Santa Lucia range could see 4 to 8. That's still a ton of rain. And I think there's a perception out there, and you've been following social media today. And I talked to KZOZ guys today, and they were saying a lot of people are like, well, this storm's a bust. And I think it's because people get a lot of their forecasts through icons. Mm-hmm. And so, the rain on Tuesday was a fairly light rain, as we expected it to be.
And it's better for us to get, let the ground get a little wet, but not just completely soaked.
Wouldn't it be great if we could get through this event with beneficial rainfalls, helping the reservoirs, the feet of snow in the mountains, and not have much more major activity? I do think the officials really acted in caution I know people are so tired of bugging out of Montecito, and they've done it 5 times now. But I still think even if we only end up with, say, 4 total inches of rain, or even 3 across that area, I would still have done the same thing.
Right, and we don't know how that hillside is going to react to an inch of rain or 4 inches of rain. It's just too soon. So, they definitely made the right call. better to be safe than sorry.
I'm really happy to see that people did. Picked up on the narrative. I was concerned going in that they were saying we're just sick of bugging out, and even though the forecast was scary, that they were going to stay. But I think they were saying 75% of the people they had visited with yesterday or prior to yesterday actually did what they wanted. So I was encouraged by that. I was encouraged that people picked up on the narrative. But we're continuing to follow it. Christina's been here all day, and when Karina gets in,
2 a.m.
When Karina gets in, we're going to cut her loose for a little while to rest. Thanks for joining us for this, and please follow her on social media. She does such a great job in the mornings as well, along with Brooke and Scott. So thanks for joining us for this.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see your forecast. That was a huge help. So yeah, we'll be keeping you updated tomorrow morning too. I think that's going to be a critical time as well into early tomorrow morning. This kind of looks like it might refire then.
Yeah, I think again, I think there are two big pulses.
Right.
And if we're in I think the modeling's been pretty good about this. We're looking at one between now and say 8 o'clock for the area, probably more of a slow county thing, and then something that goes middle of the overnight into the early morning hours, possibly lingering in the afternoon in Santa Barbara County. So, and by the way, we are trying very carefully to include both counties. I think there's some perception there that, we're so maybe weighted for the Santa Barbara County influence here because of Montecito and everything. We have crews basically evenly dispersed between the two counties to cover the storm.
Really, to stretch it, we had this morning Brooke Martell reporting in Cambria and Megan Abundis reporting in Montecito. So that pretty much stretches our entire viewing area to the max.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got it all covered for you, and our crews are working tirelessly. And
literally everybody is on it. I mean, this is it's crazy. There's just so many people. In fact, right now, if you look back here in the newsroom, you'll see that there aren't a whole lot of people here. It's because they're all out there. They're all kind of getting in place.
They're out there. They're getting photos and videos of this rain. And as long as you're safely able to do so, we would love to see your photos and videos of the storm. We haven't gotten a lot in so far today.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
We, it's typically we get lots of rain gauge pictures or flooding, and I think there have been so few actual problems so far.
Yeah.
And a lot of the rain has been just sort of light to moderate. We just haven't seen a lot of pictures, so send us some pictures. We want to see what you see.
Question I had for you. There was some discussion of thunderstorms, lightning.
Yeah.
Do you think that that'll develop today?
I do think there is some risk of it. Initially, it looked like this was all just going to be a run-up, but at the tail end of this thing, there is a little cold air that's going to interact with the backside of the system. And there's a little trough that swings through tomorrow. My concern about it would be maybe in the late overnight, early morning hours tomorrow, but also into tomorrow afternoon. Say the chances, that's why there's no watch or severe thunderstorm watch or anything, but the chance isn't zero. I think the chance is more like 15 to 20%. It really hasn't been identified by a lot of, there are a lot of weather agencies on this thing. The Climate Prediction Center, we've been identified nationally as an area of flood concern today. And those folks were saying that Vandenberg area, just right out at the point, might be the actual focal point. And they've looked at the highest resolution, latest modeling, and they have it out there. So they haven't put the focus of it across Santa Barbara County, south coast, but more so on the west-facing part of Santa Barbara County. That's just too close for comfort for me. And, we still have some burn scars in the Lompoc area. We have the Alamo burn scar around the Santa Maria area. So I think if you're around a burn scar, you still got to take this seriously.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about is this time last year, with these rain events, we were experiencing a lot of wind, a lot of down trees, a lot of down power lines. This doesn't seem quite as windy.
No. The core of low pressure is well to the north. It is having some influencing on the where this atmospheric river is getting steered, but no, we're not near the core of the low. I do think we will see some southwest winds picking up a little bit as this main branch starts to come in, as the axis turns a little bit, but I still think the peaks of those winds probably about 15 to 20, maybe 25 miles per hour. That's all under advisory criteria. It's still enough, though, because you put a lot of weight of the water into the trees and on power lines. You get infrastructure always. When you have a prolonged event, it doesn't even have to be that much. But once you have a prolonged event, things just kind of start happening after a while.
Yeah.
And that's why I think as we go into tonight, even if the biggest winds don't develop, and I really don't think they will, it could be enough to start seeing a few more cascading issues just because of cumulative rainfall, just because it's been going on as long as it has.
Even though we haven't seen those widespread outages yet, still a possibility, still a good time now to get your flashlights together, your batteries, and just be ready to go, because the next 24 hours or so here is going to be kind of
I think, you know, just when you look at the modeling and everything that's set up, this did look like an event where we needed to put everybody on some level of alert across the entire area. If this ends up being slightly less than that, I sure hope that the takeaway isn't a cry wolf scenario, because as we've said across Santa Barbara County, and it just goes to SLO County as well, you know, when you're talking about saving lives and property, the difference between it being a life-threatening event and not is pretty narrow. And in this case, I think it's been great to see how safe the area has been thus far, because everybody's been heeding the warnings. I think if everybody's in harm's way and with a system like this, other things can happen. But I think people have really gotten the message, and I'm happy about that. I'm happy about our role in that and what you guys have done, Weather Service and the planners. It's been good so far. But we still have this really interesting window to go through. And so far, I'm encouraged about where we're at. I hope we weather the second half of this thing as well as the first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. Thank you all. Bye.